the Grey Hat Beard podcast. Hello and welcome to Grey Hat Beard Princess show 53, and we're on to part 2. If you haven't listened to part 1, go back and listen to last week's show. We talked about all the news. We talked about how you should love service accounts and have lots of them all over the place, or something like that, I think. And we talked about celebrating the birthday of Microsoft Teams and all the good things it brought there as well. So do go back and give that a listen. In this part, we're going to be talking with our guest, Wictor Wilen, who's going to talk to us about the journey of Yo Teams. Now, you might not know what Yo Teams is, but that's why we have Wictor here to explain it to you. So, Wictor, over to you. What is Yo Teams?
Thanks, Kevin. Yes, so what is Yo Teams? And I sometimes wonder that myself. But essentially, if I'm being very egoistic and tell you what it is, it's a tool to help me. That's why I built that tool. So, and it was a tool for me to being able to build demos for conferences, etc., etc. So I got faster on doing that and helping myself. That's why it was purely egoistic. That's why I did it to start with. And so Yo Teams essentially scaffolds out an application, a skeleton for application for Microsoft Teams based on Node and React and all some other fancy open source technologies in the way that I prefer to do things. So it is very sort of biased towards how I want to build things. That's at least how it started. But it started because when Teams came out, I had the fortune of being able to test Teams before that was even announced and nobody knew about it. There were some rumors in the newspapers. The company I worked for had the opportunity to be in that very, very early beta. And the first thing I started to figure out, coming from the SharePoint world and being a developer, you need to add stuff into this. You need to be able to build things or configure things, etc. And actually, they did have a very, very simple way of adding tabs at that case. So when Teams came out, now it's a little bit 5 years and a couple of days. It was general available, but during that preview and public preview, they had a small SDK out that could help you build tabs in Teams. And as you know, most of our extensions and add-ons on our Teams are different kind of tabs. It was fairly simple. It's just an iframe essentially. But with that SDK,
initially it was just a manifest, wasn't it?
Yes. So it's a manifest. We can go into that as well, but essentially a tab is an iframe, right? And the small SDK that exists gives you the context of the tab, the name of the tab, an ID, your username, nothing more. So it was fairly easy to take an existing web app and convert that into Teams app. And the way you did that is a fairly smart move, as they did when they started building Teams app, is through that manifest as you just said. So a Teams app is essentially two things. It's your app built in something. Could be with Yo Teams, could be with Power Apps, could be built as a nodes database if you want to. Something that can be hosted on the web in an iframe. But then you have the manifest, and that's what Teams understand. Teams only understands that manifest, and that manifest points out, here's the URL to your tab, here's the name for it, this is how you can use it in a group conversation, Teams conversation, a personal, and a couple of other things, and nice logo, color that logo, and monochrome logo, and those kind of things, right? So that's the manifest. It's a simple JSON file, as we talked about in the previous episode. JSON, just configuration. Anyone can do it. Just Notepad, scribble that together, point to that URL, and you can take your existing WordPress site and turn it into Teams app. And that's that manifest file. You zip it together with two images, the color logo and the monochrome logo, essentially, and then you give that to your admin of your Teams tenant, and they upload that one. So once you uploaded that Teams manifest, as long as you have the same URL, you can do whatever you want in that app, update it however much you want to, etc., etc. But that's where Teams started. And I said 5 years ago, a couple of days before the general availability, I had a conference, SharePoint Saturday in Munich, I think it was, and I wanted to show a Teams tab. That was, as we talked before the session here, how we prepare our sessions at conferences. I handed in a couple of months before that, I want to build a Teams app and show you that for the demo, and I didn't know if it even could be done. But as I said, I built that up, and since I struggled back and forth building these kind of tabs over and over again, trying to figure out the SDK and how Teams works, and as you know, preview works back and forth. I need to build those tabs and manifest.
Really sorry to take you back a sec, Wictor. Just that comment of I didn't really know if it worked. Anyone who's thinking about going speaking at conferences, but they've seen people like yourself, like Louise, and thought, oh, but they really know what they're doing. No, we just wing it better. I think.
Well, I would not say that Wictor does not know what he's doing, but there is just like a lot of experience, of course, involved, and just like a very just like educated guess. Yeah, I can make it work. And if you have just like a lot of experience and stuff, you do not need to test and develop any kind of scenario, but yeah, you would just like wing it. And of course we do prep our sessions, but sometimes there is just like a little
go for it. Go for
there
it,
is
and you'll
just like,
make it
like
happen.
a little thrill of not having tested anything, but just like saying, yeah, this little thing, I would just like do it on the go. I would just like I would just like do this on stage, and this is so exciting and so energizing. And yeah, I feel you, Wictor.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry,
That's
Wictor,
exactly.
I thought it was such an important point.
It's exactly how it was. I knew this it could be done, but I didn't know how. There was no documentation. There was no nothing but that SDK, no tooling or anything from Microsoft at that point in time. So I focused on that tab, and the way I prefer to run my sessions is I do as much live coding as possible. I don't do recordings, etc. So I wanted to sort of astonish the audience by building their first Teams app they've ever seen, right? The custom Teams app from nothing to an app that actually works in Team during that 40-minute session or something like that. And in order to do that, in order to not have to write that JSON file by myself or just copy paste from a notepad into VS Code and those kind of things, the same with the tabs and web files, I built a generator so I could just type Yo Teams and answer a couple of questions, scaffold out the manifest for me, and then build that tab and have it hosted in Microsoft Teams. So that's why I built Yo Teams to start with. And the focus, as I said, was on tabs. It was actually called the Yo Teams tab to start with. But I renamed it a couple of months later when they added the features for bots, then messaging extensions. And at that point in time, I also got to know the architects for the Teams platform quite well. They helped me out and gave me some insights on what to do, etc. And from there, it went fairly slow. I wouldn't say it's not even near like SharePoint framework extensibility and usage, because it's a much more popular platform. But it's a continuous increase. And since the last 2 years, since we moved over to from my repository, essentially over to the PMP repository and use the PMP marketing and have that channel as well to reach out to new developers, it has increased quite a bit. And month over month, we hit new records on downloads and those kind of things. So it's going really well. It's not been easy since Teams platform has changed. There's not been much help, not much tooling. There was very little documentation, but we have a great community that helps with a lot of these kind of things. So I received feedback from many folks out there on what to do, what not to do, etc. And as I told you in the beginning, it was very biased towards how I wanted to build things. And that's things I had to take into consideration. Not everyone prefers to write it this way. I had fairly strict rules of how to do linting or how to do test cases, but everyone has their own preferred way of doing this. But on the other hand, all this is open source. There's nothing closed, or the things that is being scaffolded. There's not a bunch of components that hides all the code for you. You can do whatever you want with that code as soon as it's scaffolded, and you're completely disconnected essentially from the Yo Teams generator once you've done that. Yes, we have for certain set number of reasons added a couple of build packages just to make it easier for us to update existing solutions for developers when we find a bug or add a feature, etc. But yeah, they're fairly easy to remove if you don't want to use my method of doing it, or they are fairly extensible as well, so you can extend with your custom functionality. But essentially, that's the story of Teams, right? It was something I built for me to start with because I needed to build things faster.
I totally love this. So first, congratulations. Just like to this massive success. So just like because maintaining this open source for over the course of 5 years is so it's not nothing. So, and I know that this takes a lot of effort and persistence and even perseverance. It's just like dedication to community. And even if that started as I need to have something. So I would just like create something for my own. So for my use case. So, and I make a pet project, and yes, this group just like super massively. So I don't know any developer on Teams who does not use your Teams. I know a lot of them, so this is a good thing. And then this whole mentality, of course, of open sourcing stuff and making this available to community, and of course working together with community, and even then taking a step back and say, just because I like to have it linted like that, or I want to run my tests like that, as you already mentioned. It's a nice way of doing this, and I think you're pretty good at that.
Thank you.
So how did you get from you to, because there's a team of you now working on it, as obviously there's a set of contributors, but you've now got a few of you working together as part of the main maintainers, the core maintainers for it. So how did you get from it's just to me to this? I'm look, you've just done your 300th pull request on there. You've got 322 4-stars. You've got a group of you. How did you gradually grow on that?
So first of all, it's all been in bursts, based on essentially where I have been, what I have been working on, the new features from coming in Microsoft Teams or other contributors have done sort of. So, and it's pretty funny. It's typically we see a lot of downloads in May. That's when build are announced because they announce new features, right? And we update the generator to do those kind of things. But the work has been in bursts. But I've always had, as I said, the first thing I did was to share this as an open source project on my GitHub repo. That's how I did it to start with, just to get people on board, get them excited, and I had nothing to hide. And if I have a tool, fine. If someone else uses that, that's perfect, right? But then we, as I said, I had initially one of the main architects behind Teams. The Teams platform helped me out with quite a few things because he wanted to use it. Then we had other contributors starting using it and say, hey, can we do this? And then sometimes I've done it, but often I push them, hey, why don't you do clone it and do a version in your repo, and we can do pull request. I try to review it. And as I said, I try to maintain it as similar as possible. So sometimes I rewrote some of that stuff just to make sure that we have a code that looks similar so it's easier to understand. But it's been organically essentially since day one, but also coming in bursts from different folks. We had folks involved a couple of years ago building out all the test cases for me because that wasn't my expertise. So Kaiga's helping me out building a lot of those kind of test cases for a period. Then we had some other one coming in and helping out. But now under the PnP umbrella, we are a broader team trying to help out with documentation, bringing different kind of expertise from different areas, and also broadening sort of the perspective. So no, it's no longer a solo project, even though I'm still the main maintainer, if we say so. But we're a team helping out, trying to make it as good as or into the solution that we want to have when we build solutions.
And how do you decide where to kind of stop? Because obviously, as you said, a Teams app can be hosted anywhere. It could be a Power App. It could be something hosted on AWS, written in Go, and things like that. How do you decide what samples to include in there and what not to? Or
so it's a very good question. So to start with, when I built out, I built it for building my demo. So the scaffolded solution was very much what I needed for my demos. Then we have two kind of, this is the balance we need to make. Sort of, we have two areas or two ways to go. Either you have a very slim scaffolded application with just the bare bones, right? Or you have something full with a full example, which is probably easier for if you're a very new developer and just want to tweak some HTML tags or React components and whatnot. But I'm leaning towards more the bare bones. This is more if you should know React before, you should know something before, and then add more, because we have very lot of good samples in the GitHub community or the PnP community as well, where you can just copy paste from. But so as I said, it's really hard to decide which path to go bare bone or the full example. But the full example is going to be very biased who builds that sample. It's very hard to make a generic sample that fits everyone. Someone wants to use React components, someone React hooks, someone, there's so many ways. Someone wants to use Angular and whatnot, right? So we don't want to give that bias. And today we have more telemetry.
So do you try and focus more on the kind of Teams functionality
yes.
and the different frameworks? So you make sure you cover as much of that, but within possibly a narrower tech development stack.
Yeah, so two things there. You mentioned sort of what kind of apps, or where do you want to host it? We based everything on Node.js TypeScript to start with, so it can be hosted anywhere. That was one of my main goals. I wanted to have it easy to publish to Azure, and also build locally without any kind of rigs or setups or emulators and things. But if I want to push it to the Heroku or run it in Amazon, I can do that. So that was one of the core design fundamentals to start with, and all open source. But I think where we're going right now when it comes to features, we try to see what comes in the Microsoft Teams area, what's happening there. So that's when as I said, when we add new features, it's typically around build when they announce new developer features. And we're looking forward to May right now. They did an announcement this fall around we have the new Teams SDK version 2, which is promise-based, finally, instead of the old JavaScript callback-based version. So that's what we have in Joe Teams, the next version. But also that will allow us to create these collaborative apps experience that can live in Office.com, Outlook.com, and even in the thick Outlook client. So you will be able to use Joe Teams to have a tab that lives in your Outlook, and even all other canvases that the team has plans for. And I don't know when that's going to be GA, so it's in our next version that we have. Trying that out, but it actually works. I can build a tab that works in Teams, Outlook.com, and in my Outlook client right now.
That's really good. Well, now I'm going to be careful here, and if we need to go back and edit the show, I'm very happy to do that. But something you said there about collaborative apps. Now, obviously, Microsoft Loop and the pieces there and next step there. Are you looking down that route, or do I need to shush and not give anything away too much?
No. So there's no secret there. So the new Teams JavaScript SDK will be able to, as I said, running Outlook.com and other services. I don't know yet. I'm not involved in that team. You mentioned Loop components. First, no, we're not going to support Loop components out of the box in Yo Teams. However, and I'm going to tell this. So this week we have in M365 Core our FHL week, Fix Hack Learn. So we can hack something, learn something, or fix something. And I'm hacking and learning this week. So I'm actually building a Teams application, of course, scaffolded with Yo Teams that uses the fluid components. So it's actually building a loop component that can use the tab, but also in conversations and other loop canvases going forward. So that's what I'm focusing on this week. And, and that goes back to how the generator has evolved over time. So I have a week right now spending time on that and found a couple of things that I want to improve in the generator. So I'm going to fix those. That's on my calendar for tomorrow, Wednesday, and publish them for everyone to use later.
Okay.
Oh, that's great.
People would have heard you work at Microsoft, but how much time is your day job versus kind of evenings versus is it not at all? Or
no, not at all. So this is not a part of my job at all. This is just for fun, or it's been sort of my
half our audience are going hell yeah, and the other half is going for fun, really.
yeah. No, there's been sort of the roles I've been in the last few years has been more business oriented. I haven't written code for customers in a very long time, unless there's very new technology or something I explored. But the code that's being delivered to customers is not written by me. But this has been my safe haven, if I can say so, to go out there and actually spend time on the weekends and evenings just to learn stuff, make sure that I am up to date with the technology. As I said, the way I've been working and still partially working are talking to customers, understanding their needs, and translating that into a technology solution, right? And just being good at understanding and not translating is really hard, right? So I want to do both, so I can translate to my dev teams and on how to build it, and that's how Joe Teams has also been shaped, right? How can I make it easy for developers to focus on the business problem and ignore all that kind of manifest stuff we talked about, and how to host stuff, and they can host it anywhere in containers and whatnot. So that's, as I said, it's purely for fun, and because I'm a developer by heart, and I'm always gonna be. And I showed you before we went on here sort of my home automation stuff. I like understanding technology, because if I understand the technology, it's easier for me to talk to customers.
Yeah. So I can totally relate. So of course I can read about stuff, and then I think, I got it, but I really only really understand it if I build it on my own. So if I can't build it, I can't understand this. But if I was able to build something, then it's just like so easy to talk about this. And of course, there's a lot of energy then involved as well, because then I like it because I build it. So it's just like way easier for me to build things and then talk just like at least remotely smart way about it, than just like to only read or hear other people talking about something that does not work for me. But of course we all learn differently, but it sounds as if you need to build stuff as well.
Absolutely, and it's not just about the learning stuff, but I agree absolutely in that's how I learn things, by doing the wrong way a couple of times until I find the right way. But also, if you have that experience of learning by doing, you also know what you can't do. And that's a big difference. If you read, you only learn what you can do, not what you can't do. So
and it remembers more than someone telling you that they couldn't do it. It's got to go, oh yeah, and then you forget that. Actually hitting that, doing, as we were talking about commit messages before, all those commit messages go, doesn't work, now it works, yay.
But I think this is a very, very good point. Recognizing, okay, this is something I can do. This is something you can't do, because not as part your limited skills in something. It's just like, so it is not supported, or there is no way to do this, perhaps yet. And then, of course, give this as a feedback to them. So, hey, could you please improve this or that? Because they are not even aware that you need some kind of stuff. So this is always just like a cycle of just like, I learn stuff, I build stuff, I break stuff, I see where this is limited, and then I give this as a feedback so that they can improve. But building is just like, it's at the core of everything from my.
Absolutely, and I've been fortunate having this project for 5 years. So during the course of time, I've tried new solutions, new technologies, new ways of doing everything from the build process faster, better, etc. And I had some amazing help covering sort of the gaps in my skill sets. I even had folks from the TypeScript team that made some commits just to make it build better.
List of names of people.
Yeah, exactly. Which is really cool, actually. Yeah. So it's super fun, because I learned from them as well when they come with some inner details about Webpack that I didn't understand or didn't get to work properly, but someone else did that. So we learn from each other by doing these kind of things, and that's what I love about the community. And I'm not the only one who loves to learn things this way, and we can see that. And by all the great demos in the communities, folks have been struggling for weeks and weeks for that. I don't know, 12, 15-minute demo they do, but you don't know how much sweat is behind that demo sometimes.
I know, so I have a quite good idea about this, but it's very true. But I think if you build and maintain an open source project, and of course you collaborate with people, this is just like so different than building just on your own. And of course it exposes you and your work. This is somehow good, but somehow you realize everyone is watching, of course, as well. So because I could make the repository private, of course. There is no value in this. So yes, watch me do this and watch me fail, and then watch me succeed again.
I feel this is
quite nice.
about the P&P communities, they're not judgmental. They're there to help you and say, have
Absolutely.
you thought about doing this? Have you thought it's not kind of, oh, look, well, you're doing it that way. That's ridiculous. Why would you do that? It's that supportive, have you thought about this? And I know Gary's talked about this with the CLI for Microsoft 365, the things he has learned from working with others, from working with Waldeck on the CLI. He's just learned so much more. And we Gary and I did a series for the Microsoft Reactor about kind of getting into open source and getting into open source projects. And it was exactly the thing he said is you've got that opportunity and you're just a perfect example here, Victor, of that, of something you don't do as a day job that, you know, for you, this isn't something you want to get into as a career directly, but for many people, they might want to go from being a business analyst or in different areas and want to go more into coding and technology. That is your opportunity with getting involved in these projects of trying different things out and trying it with something new, not just saying, oh, I'd like to do this. You can go and do it, and then you can show to people that on your CV. You can have that confidence to go in and go, yeah, I know how to create a Teams app because I've done one. And yeah, so totally. I love you and thank you for doing this stuff with this.
No, totally. So I'm not as long into open source as Victor is, but it makes happy. And with every person I talk to, so you know, most probably I'm involved in P&P sharing is caring, which brings new contributors to P&P and just like to sharing what they know. And of course, they don't know anything about all that stuff. But once you teach them just like a tiny bit, just like, hey, this is the button that you need to click. And yeah, you can't break it. So we made it just like so secure that you can't break stuff. So even if you make it,
well, Gary said that to me, but I managed to for the CLI, but that's a different story for a different day. But generally, no. And then you have lovely supportive people.
There is always rebase. So
that's your I agree with what you're saying, and it's so rewarding being a part of this community. And as you said, Louis, sharing very openly what you're doing. Sometimes you fail miserably. I've done that a couple of times. Tried to remove Git the commits and all those kind of things. I've done. I even sort of probably all of us posted like an API secret or something like that, and even worse things, stupid swear words in comments and whatnot. But I've been. And that's how, as I said, goes back to how I learned. So, and that's a funny thing. The other day, I shared on Twitter my first open source contribution, and it was actually 2001. That's when I did my first open source contribution. That's how I learned .NET, because they created the Mono project, which was an open source implementation of .NET, and I built the globalization classes. And some of the HTTP pipeline request pipelines for that, and that's how I learned C#.
Was that code project then, or
Project Mono it was called. It's now was powering Xamarin and all that kind of stuff.
But that was 2001.
2001, yes. And it was actually Miguel de Casa who did the commit for me. I sent it in over email to him, and he put it in the repo.
Oh, how cute is that? So this is a lovely story, and I feel this could be quite encouraging for everyone who's new into that, or is just like considering, should I make a move? Should I put myself out there? Should I do something? And I need to say my very first commits, these were those typo fixes in docs whenever I saw something, but it really got me into this because it's, so this is, I can add value, and then it was just like not only fixing something, but creating something new, and then it was just like little bit more code, and then it was like more samples, and so it just like grew over time, and I feel like this is very encouraging if you say, hey, this is just like more than 20 years ago, so this this makes you know.
What do you mean? That's not. Oh gosh, that is more than 20 years ago.
It is actually.
But I don't understand this because last year is still 2019 for me. And if you say 20 years ago, I somehow assume this is the 80s, and somehow it's not. So it's just like, so my understanding of time is totally broken. So this is a concept which
you're spot on, Louise. Get starting, and I had a couple of those into your teams as well, just a typo in the documentation and those kind of things, but that's as term we used in the previous episode, the gateway drug into open source is doing that, right? Because it's a fulfillment when you can help somebody out to fix those kind of things, and sometimes we do typos, right? And it's inevitable to do that, and someone else can help out with that dot that's placed wrong or documentation that it's incorrect, or even Joe Team's a very good example. Since we updated a couple of times over the years, the old tutorials doesn't really work anymore. And someone goes in and fixes that, or even goes in and even adding an issue. I think that's a good help as well. Just making us aware of that.
Yeah.
So,
and I think even if you do small commitments like, hey, I fixed a typo, or I just make you aware, hey, there is a thing I can't fix it, or perhaps I don't dare to fix it, so I'm asking you, hey, may I fix this? So do I have your agreement to do this? It gets you familiar with that repository, with the maintainers, so you just like reach out to people and you find a way of working together towards a shared goal, because we all want to make this thing better. So this is a cool thing, and I just want to make it better, ensuring, I don't know, that there is no typo, or that the tutorial reflects the actual version of that, or just like to make things more accessible, or whatever it is. And if you start small, even if it's very, very small, it gets you familiar with that repository, with the maintainers, with all of the processes, and of course you get familiar with the folder structure and where everything should sit, and how the maintainers decided to do things. Just like, you have a way of doing stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Because over the year, this grew just like organically, but an outside person can't know. And they will get used to that. Perhaps your repository handles stuff totally different than perhaps CLI for Microsoft does this. Because
exactly. Maybe. And then I'm not being like a GitHub religious fan and doing everything by the book when it comes to branches and all those kind of things either. So if someone fixes typo directly in the master branch, I don't go back always and tell them, hey, please commit it to preview instead, and those kind of things. We just run it through if it works. Yeah, exactly. That's what I say. But on the other hand, if there's someone else in the team that I know has more experience in that, then I'll ask them to do that. Or if someone submits a bug or an issue or anything, I know that they are capable of doing that. I try to ask them first. But if there's the first time post or anything, treat that a little bit different. Try as much as possible to be inclusive. But yes, I'm not always in there every day and taking a look at the GitHub issues. So sometimes it slips a couple of days, and sometimes people get pissed, honestly, because you're not directly immediately.
Don't do that.
No, this is, as I said,
you do this in your own time for the fun of it. Don't shout at people for that. Please don't.
So it happens once in a while, unfortunately.
So this happens, and of course, we always try to put just like some kind of notice in the repository. So it's like, so hey, everyone does their best to keep things moving forward, but we're all human beings. We all have a life. So there is no SLA that needs to be fulfilled, right here. And if I have an issue, I can't just like demand, you need to fix this right now, or you need to put a response in there. And I feel like the more people we educate on how things are done in open source, the more we get used to that as well. But I know just like it's a lot of hours of doing work, and no one recognizes it, and no one sees how many hours you spend on that. But so even if I go through the commitments, it's sweat and it's blood and it's tears and it's stuff that is not working, and it's frustrating at times, of course, as well. And then people just like, so what? And but still, it is delivering great value.
On the other hand, I try to see positive from that. If someone is angry about something, they're probably really dependent on this tool, and so I see that as a positive sign. They're using it, right?
They are using it. So this is that's a pretty good trait.
The other thing I'd say to people listening who are possibly thinking, oh my goodness, Victor's gone there and he's just done this quick thing that's now used by thousands, hundreds of thousands of people around the world on there. It is okay just to fix one thing and do one commit. It doesn't mean you're going to suddenly be doing open source every single night. I know poor Wildex and Gary have been chasing me to finish off something on the CLI that I've left for a couple of months. It happens, do the things like that. Do what you can do. Don't feel you have to do absolutely everything. Don't feel that you suddenly have to be running these massive repos. Help where you can. It may just stop there. It may snowball into something else. Both are good.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Cool. So what's next for your teams? Just carrying on, waiting for May.
Yes, May is one big event, hopefully. If there's any build, we don't know anything about that yet, but that's typically, if I take my Power BI reports, it shows that something's going to happen in build. If you take a look at the previous year's trends. But there's essentially one thing that's happening now. A couple of months ago, we added additional telemetry to the solution to see, as I said, for 5 years, it's been growing quite fast with a lot of new features added. So when you compared to the first time when I scaffolded out that Teams tab at the SharePoint conference in Munich, that was a couple of questions you answered. These are the features I wanted this name my tab. Right now, about a year ago, we introduced sort of an advanced option to get all the questions, and one more simpler offering to just have a few of them. But there's so many options right now. And when we run the unit tests, it's about 40,000 different kind of tests that goes through in different permutations. And I'm not covering everything with that. So we have looked into a couple of features that people aren't using, or like one every second month or something like that. Then most likely we deprecate them. They are fairly easy to implement anyway, so it could be done with the sample where you copy paste stuff, which would be better. So those are the kind of things we're looking into for version 4 as well, making even simpler, removing some more of my bias in the code, make it simpler. But at the same time, we're also exploring the option of having an advanced option of having more scaffolded code there. So as I said, it's a trade-off, right? So, but right now we trying to.
But I think that's what people like. They like the simple, but the ability to get to the advanced.
Yes.
Don't treat people.
Yes and no. So
give them a choice. I think that's good.
Absolutely, give them a choice, but also unfortunately we don't get as many new developers on board if we don't have that sort of full end-to-end example from the beginning that almost have your almost like magic that creates your app for you, right?
Yeah.
And there's some additional stuff. And to be honest, we do have the tool release from Microsoft as well, the Teams Toolkit, which is another great option if you want to scaffold out Teams applications. They do it a little bit differently. So if that flavor fits you more, then by all means, go ahead, use that tool as well. And we even share some of the same components, and we do talk to each other as well. So it's just two different flavors of doing things.
That's nice. It's good to have options.
Yeah, but I think, so I see we're not seeing a lot of new developers in Teams in general, because so platform is just like standing still for developers. They're not on the user side, but the product team does not think developers first, and recognizes this as their mainstream of revenue. So because if you make developers happy, they will just like extend the platform, and if they do this, you will just like, of course, sell more licenses. So that could be a good thinking as well, but they somehow don't do this. But I feel like, so of course, Teams development, so this is hard. So even for experienced developers, it's hard because you first need to create that bot, and then you need to host it somewhere. And I feel like
test it locally.
If the product team would manage to just like abstract this away, that I first need to create the bot and host it somewhere, or just, let me host it somewhere, but just like make the bot just like working. Give me a toggle or just like a property that I can set it true or false if I want to use the built-in one, or if I want to create my own one. That would be just like massively beneficial for developer adoption.
Just like OneDrive versus SharePoint
in my opinion. But
and those are the kind of things we're trying to work. We work with the CLI team as well. So one of the ideas we have is to scaffold out a set of CLI scripts that do some of that, setting up the bot and all the stuff in Azure and the AAD apps for you, and always as well that maintains those URLs that changes when you do development. So those are kind of things to provide you with a set of scripts, because yes, we could have so just compare Teams Toolkit has some of those features built in that's deployed directly to Azure, but that's more built into the tooling, right? And I want to disconnect the tooling once I have scaffolded the project, and also be as much prepared for CI/CD and those kind of things, to have a proper script that can do all that for you. So those are the kind of things that, if someone out there wants to help to build those scripts, we're very much up for that.
So if you are listening now and want to get in touch with Wictor, you can do this. I assume on LinkedIn and on Twitter as well.
Twitter is the easiest one. Yeah.
Twitter is the easiest one, and I'm so jealous because Wictor just goes by @Wictor on Twitter. So it's just this first name. This is I'm kind of jealous about this because so @Louisa was taken by someone who only had one tweet 5 years ago. I'm just like, why? So please do reach out to Wictor. Help is highly appreciated. And even if you think, but I can't do it on my own, all help helps.
Absolutely.
So do you have? I know Gary's talked before with the CLI about having good first issues and help wanted. So if people wanted to come and help, if they go, we'll put the link to the Yo Teams GitHub repo. If they go and look at the issues, see where help is wanted, and get in touch on there as well as via Twitter, then that's the best way to go through.
The best way is to go in, either pick one of those good first issues or advanced issues, whatever you want to, or start a new issue or a new conversation, or an issue could be, yes, I want to help with this, or I have an idea, and let's take it from there. So that's how we run this.
I see one of them there's add support for meeting extensions. I thought you had that in already, actually.
No, and it's been back and forth around that, since it's essentially, that goes back to how much scaffolded code should we have in there, right? So since we have support for tabs already, it's fairly easy to convert that into a meeting extension. So so I've been dabbling back and forth. It would be fairly easy to add. It's just another option you have in there, and I don't know if there should be any difference in the scaffolded code. So, but it's a trade-off, right? It's fairly, perhaps, I think we discussed it a couple of weeks ago. We should have documentation on how to do that, because you need to add 2 lines into the manifest, and then you're essentially good to go. So what's the benefit of adding another, if you look at the permutation, 2,000-3,000 unit test to this and have it work? And the reason how this tool works as well is, you probably, if you have a Teams project, you run it once and then you don't use Teams Teams anymore, because you're done, right? Then you modify the manifest and other stuff later, even though we have support for running Yo Teams again over an existing project. But if you have 6-7 months between them, there might be an update, so we can't merge and all those kind of things. So, and that's what we see from telemetry as well, that it's typically 1 or 2 off that you build a project, you make 1 or 2 tests, right, and then you start building your project, and you're in development mode instead of generation mode.
Yeah, I love that you added telemetry for. I assume just like a lot, because it's just like makes it just like more predictable. Just like, so how are they using it? How many are using it? Even just like, why are they using that? Perhaps we don't have.
I would love to have more telemetry, but for many privacy reasons, GDPR reasons, etc., we don't track everything. I would love to track more, but we can't do that, unfortunately. So essentially, just the different commands you run, but nothing more. Essentially, nothing that tracks individuals. I would love to see if someone reuses stuff, but we don't do that. No cookies like that, unfortunately. But that's I can live with that.
So one last question.
Yes.
Obviously, you've got Yo Teams that kind of would spin up a new app. How many apps do you think you've created then with it?
I actually don't, how personally or in general.
Personally, because obviously you must be trying it out quite a few times.
Oh yes, I'm pretty sure it's over 1,000, and I always run with the. I don't want to sort of influence the telemetry, so I always run without telemetry. So I unfortunately don't see that. So I have to turn telemetry off on my machine because I do quite a lot of those things, specifically when you're testing. So we do have really good unit testing right now, and if I run those unit tests, it creates about 400 or 500 Teams projects, different versions of that. But yes, I'm pretty sure I've done over 1,000 of them, different kind of shapes and forms. And just because, and also one of the benefits I had actually in my work at that time when I built this out was going out to customers that were interested in Teams and talked about the extensibility. And I could in 10 minutes build a Teams app a tab for them and just show them this is what you actually can do. And it isn't that hard, etc. So yes, I've done thousands.
That's great.
That is quite impressive.
Yeah,
I do have a question. So
yes.
Of course, so this would be a good thing for just like for the next year, but for just like so the next month, what's your wish for your teams?
My wish for your teams, I hope for the next 2 months, let's say, I hope they get the promise-based SDK to version 2, so we can go to version 4 with your teams, because it's going to make for a lot of folks and developers easier to work with that, and also it opens up a whole set of new canvases, depending on when they get up on preview with these new collaborative apps or whatever they're going to call with Outlook.com, etc. I think that's my big wish for this, because I've been waiting for this so long to have a better SDK and a better story around that.
Yeah. So if you're listening, just say get in touch.
Absolutely.
Or just ship it. So you don't need to get it. Just ship it.
Yes. Make it so. Well, thank you so much, Wictor. That was absolutely fascinating. Really enjoyed that. I know I've used your Teams. I'm definitely into double figures on there. Still having fun with my meeting app, which is just about getting there. The happy hour etiquette is moving on. You'll be happy to hear, Louise. But yeah, that started with Yo Teams. So I'm a happy user. And I'm now wondering about that meeting extension, thinking, oh, I could get involved in that. No, don't commit to more stuff. But if there are other people, get involved. But thank you so much.
Thank you so much for hosting me.
We'll put the link to that, and otherwise we'll be back next week with the latest news. So thanks very much for joining us, Wictor. Thank you, Louise, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Have a nice one.
Thanks for listening to Grey Hat Beard Podcast. The song Drink Up My Mateys was brought to you by Black Bones under a non-commercial attribution license.